What's up, everybody? Cinephile Mike here. Today, I am joined by writer and director Jeremy Seifert to talk about his new documentary, Papertown, which is having its world premiere at the Mountain Film Festival. Papertown follows the impact of the sudden closure of an over a century old paper mill in Canton, North Carolina, capturing a community as it navigates uncertainty, loss, and change in real time. Jeremy, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So, diving right in, being that you're based near Canton, this wasn't just the story that you heard about, it was happening in your community. At what point did you realize that this was something that you needed to document and not just be a witness to?
Great question. It's Canton is about 20 minutes from Asheville. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and the Appalachian Mountains. And I was driving around town one morning, going to a coffee shop or something, and I heard on BPR, which is Blue Ridge Public Radio, our NPR, that this paper mill in Canton was closing, and the summary was it was the economic backbone of this community and tied to their identity. And I had driven past Canton many times and maybe through it a handful of times going fishing or something. And I just knew it as the smelly paper mill town. But when I heard the story on NPR and then found out that same day kind of how the employees had found out, most of whom found out on Facebook, and the absolute anger, devastation that they were confronting, I called some local filmmaker friends and said, "Hey, I think this would be really interesting to document in real time." And they were like, "Yeah, we had the same thought." And I think it was a day or two later we were out there filming, and kicked off the whole thing. And we filmed for basically 3 months from when the announcement of the closure was made to the closing of the mill in early June. So I didn't really stand by as a witness for very long. It was
Yeah.
immediately I thought it was a interesting story and a really kind of amazing opportunity as a filmmaker to document while it was actually happening versus a lot of documentaries, you're telling about the thing that
Right.
already happened.
And so the film captures the events as they unfolded over those about 3 months, but you also reflected on what came after. When did you realize the story needed that broader sense of time?
Phew. We were realizing it all the way through the filming because we were having conversations, obviously, with all the locals and the people impacted, and Zeb Smathers, the mayor, and then we were having conversations as a filmmaking team, and I was thinking, oh man, this documentary might need to like last for 10 years or more because the real impact, obviously, the immediate impact is you take away the employer of 1,200 people in a town that has a population of 4,400 people. So it's basically everyone who works at the mill and their families live in this town.
Mhm.
So obviously, there's immediate impact, but then to understand when you have something that central to a town and everyone knows each other and works there and that place of employment keeps everyone there and not only them but their children and their grandchildren. Most people we interviewed were third, fourth, sometimes fifth generation mill workers. So
Yeah.
that creates like a really particular culture and sense of community. So that impact and like what becomes of Canton and how Canton changes culturally and the people who populate it and how they know each other and interact with each other. I don't think that will be known for years, maybe decades to come as people start working 30 minutes away, an hour away, then end up moving because that mill like kind of kept people in that particular space and place. So we did follow it for it's been 3 years since we first started rolling. So we have been able to witness some pretty major changes, and now the tearing down of the paper mill is still underway by Spiritus Worldwide.
And as you followed this community for all these years, what stood out to you I'm sure a lot of things, but were there any key things that stood out to you about how the community was processing everything?
Well, yeah, quite a few things stood out as, we were trying to essentially be witnesses and document the happening. And of course, be creative with how we did that. But I didn't go into this film with ideas of what I think it should be or thought it should be, or an agenda against paper mills and like, ooh, it's going to be an environmental doc. I'm going to
Right.
show how they polluted the river, which these things did happen, and then improvements were made along the way, and but instead we just wanted to listen to them and live through this moment with the town, and document it. But yeah, some cool things sort of rose to the surface as we were spending time there. And one of those was what I would categorize as political depolarization, where you have um, Gail Mole, who's the secretary of the Union Hall, who is a diehard Democrat, reads the New York Times every day, reads, she's a voracious reader and makes fun of everybody. And Gail makes a cake every Thursday at the Union Hall. And
That cake looked so good. I'm telling you, I was like, I want some of that.
And then she says, we always say like, "Oh, do you love this kind of cake?" "Oh, no, I hate this stuff. I never take a bite. I wouldn't eat this if you paid me." But anyway, Gail is serving food and like serving hugs and love to all these men who come through, most of whom are Republicans or
Yep.
leaning very right, very conservative. And she knows that, and they know where she stands, and they can talk about it and still love on each other and be good neighbors. And this happened all throughout the making of the film that we were seeing. Like, Zeb Smathers, the mayor, is a Democrat.
Yeah.
A lot of the characters we filmed with are not Democrats, and they don't always love Zeb, right?
Right.
But they understand that Zeb is fighting for them as a community. And so to see being a good neighbor, or if you want to go spiritual, like love your neighbor as yourself, to see that placed above political allegiance was, I think, really special. And we didn't really tease it out any more than it's there in the film. It's just kind of the subtle thing that's just there for people who are, have eyes to see and kind of notice the little cues.
And so you mentioned Zeb, you mentioned Gail, and then also, we spend time with other people like with Matthew and with Roger, who give us real different windows into the town and this experience. I can only imagine with all the years, how did you decide whose perspectives were going to anchor this story?
Yeah. You know, our one of our producers, Chris Pruitt, lives in Canton. His papa worked in the mill for 30 years. Chris was an immediate connection to some of our main characters, including Matt Boydston, who you mentioned, who is our cold open. He's
Mhm.
amazing. He's like what I often refer to as like an Appalachian Shakespearean character with
Yeah.
his just articulate wit and hilarity. But so Matt's mom, Nancy, is Chris's neighbor, So we literally drove to Chris's house. This is like day one, and walked over to Nancy's house, and Matt came over and met us there, and we did the interview in his dad's tool shed. So and some of the characters sort of chose us, and then it was like Matt would say to us, "Hey, you go over and talk to Jonathan Lovelace and see what he has to say." So
Mm.
we, okay, let's go talk to Jonathan Lovelace. Or he said, that midget banjo player Roger Frady, and so hey, we got to go talk to Roger Frady.
There you go.
So yeah, and then of course we wanted to find and meet with other characters, but it was a really difficult time for the whole community, and it was
Right.
even hard to get time with Matt Boydston because he was stressed out, he was angry, he was having to work double shifts, and he was trying to like look for potential other job
Yeah.
while staying there as long as he could so he could get his severance pay. And a lot of people didn't want to talk to us because of the severance pay and not knowing how things were going to go down. I mean,
Mm.
Pactive Evergreen brought in security, they had cameras. They were
Right.
sort of people felt like watched and sort of in a weird lockdown state. And we tried and tried and tried to interview people from Pactive Evergreen and to get inside the mill, and the answer was always no or just no response. But we did years later get into the mill.
And I was gonna ask that. It's like you knew where I was going. So that was a question that I had. We get that shift when we get access to the mill. And how did that influence what you were hoping to capture for Papertown?
Yeah, I mean, we almost finished the film before we got into the mill. We were getting close to a rough cut, and but we were struggling with our act three. Um, and then Hurricane Helene came and wiped everybody out, including a lot of us who didn't have electricity for weeks and then water for months. Um, and so that put everything on hold for the film. And I think that was a good thing. And at first we thought we would include Helene in the film, and we did. We went and filmed all through Canton, right during and after Helene. And then it just didn't really make sense for our edit because it was just such a huge pivot to a completely different story. But um, that gave us a long enough delay that then Spiritus Worldwide bought the mill. Zeb Smathers, the mayor, helped us connect with Eric Spiritus and we got permission to film, and
Yeah,
we brought one of our characters, Roger Frady,
yeah,
and we also interviewed Eric Spiritus in the now closed mill as it was being torn down. So it was great. And I mean, it was important for all of us to actually be in that space.
yeah.
And it was really powerful to bring Roger into that space and just let him reminisce. And he's kind of like our philosopher sage in the film. He's just a very thoughtful, um, soulful human being. So yeah, it was amazing. And then, going back into the edit, we were like, okay, great. We know how to end the film now.
And so on the film, talking about that, all the footage, filming Helene, filming in the mill, doing the interviews. So Papertown has multiple cinematographers. It has yourself, Benjamin James Roberts, Jacob Sutton, aerial work by Luke Sutton. Talk about how you all collaborated to create this visual language that still feels so cohesive, even with the multiple entry points.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll answer that question also by talking about the amazing film team, who you named many of them, and then there's Chris Pruitt, producer, and Colby Sexton, producer. So the six of us, um, really from day one, we showed up and started filming. And this is like how to make a documentary film. There's many ways to make a documentary film. This documentary film gets made no other way than the way we did it, which was grab a camera, grab some lenses, lights, and without any money, go start documenting because it's happening right now. And, maybe naively, I thought we could get money a month in because amazing footage and like access, nothing, nothing came. So that
Tragically
first,
the case. Often.
yeah, so I've never had an experience like this making a documentary film. Like I've had experience where I've d donated time, days of time, where people have volunteered for a day or two or whatever. 3 months, this core team of people showing up day after day after day. I couldn't believe it. Um, and a lot of us didn't have work at the time, so that helped. It's like, well, what else are we gonna do? But then when we did start getting work opportunities to actually make money, we still stuck with it. And then we had enough people on the team that we could like, okay, you guys are gonna go make money this week. Good luck. And we'll stay here and keep filming Papertown. So, but I mean, the cohesive nature, I think, was, due in large part because we've all worked together in the past. So we kind of know each other really well. And, we chose mainly to shoot on the two red cameras, the Raptor and the Komodo, and we chose anamorphic lenses, the Atlas lenses. So that kind of helped the look. But I mean, we did at one point for the last whistle. I have a filmmaker collective that's just basically filmmakers who try to meet up about once a month and have a beer and probably it's more like therapy, you know.
Yeah.
But
Well,
storytelling and laughs and weeping and complaining. But anyway, I emailed that group and I said, hey, we need a lot of shooters. We don't have any money. We've been doing this thing for free, but it would be amazing. Anybody who can come out and help for the day. And we had 12 shooters that day.
wow.
Yeah. And so
That's amazing.
all those people came, brought their cameras, and it was amazing. And they were thanking us at the end of the day. Like, thank you so much for like letting us be a part of this because it was amazing. And so that's a powerful scene in the film, The Last Whistle. But yeah, so a lot of us, yeah, a lot of people picked up cameras. We all did a lot of shooting, but we definitely had a cohesive look, kind of that was established from the beginning. Props to Jacob Sutton, our director of photography, for really honing that in and just creating some really beautiful cinematography.
Jeremy, through your work with New Union Films, you've told a number of socially conscious stories. Where does Papertown fit within the kind of stories that you feel compelled to tell under that umbrella?
Wow. In some ways, Papertown is a little bit of a new way to do a documentary for me. I have done multiple documentaries in the past where I I'm really pissed off about something like a DuPont and the Teflon chemical C8 and this horrible lawsuit that happened in Parkersburg, West Virginia. And I've done a film kind of pointing the finger at Monsanto and genetically modified food. More of the chemicals that are sprayed on those, like Roundup, which is now found in your breakfast cereal, kids. Yay! Um, but with Papertown, I did not want to do that. It just felt wrong, and I wasn't inspired to like, you know, be an environmentalist and like, what's going on here? What's wrong with this paper mill? I just had no interest in that. Thank God, because that would have been terrible and boring. But yeah, so the approach here was be a good listener and don't screw up holding the camera and capturing the moment and make sure you have good audio and like live in this moment with these people and actually get to know them. And that is what I think is such a powerful part of this film and why I think it's important because we need desperately to listen to each other and to know each other, especially when someone on the surface is very different than us. And whether that's politically or you live in the city and you look at someone who wears overalls and talks like this and you just assume that they're ignorant because of their accent. And so it was a great joy of mine and still is, and I'm super excited about this film to show audiences because I know people are going to fall in love with these characters. And I hope that in doing so, there'll be that little question of like, oh, I thought I knew who this was, but I didn't. And this person is so much more than that little reduction that we all do it, right? It's
Mhm.
that prejudice that sneaks in there. It's like you judge someone or something without fully understanding it or knowing it. So yeah, I'm super excited about that with this film.
Awesome. Well, it's a beautiful film. Jeremy, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. Congrats on Papertown. Again, the film is having its world premiere at the Mountain Film Festival. We will include the links in the YouTube descriptor so you can find out how to watch tickets if you're in town for it. If you enjoyed this conversation, as always, please make sure you subscribe to the channel for more filmmaker interviews like this, festival coverage, spoiler-free reviews. As always, folks, this is Cinephile Mike telling you to take a break and watch something new. Jeremy, thank you so much again.
Thanks, Mike.